There was a death recently of a body positivity model or representative. She was not the first. Being a body positive personal trainer, what is your take on this?
You should love yourself for who you are, because your outside is the least important thing about you. I think the body positive industry is really important because I think, and this is my opinion, it allows everybody a space. If they want to get fit, if they want to lose weight, if they want to eat better, that's great. I think we should do that. But I don't think that they have to go together.
What are your thoughts on the people that have passed away recently because of their weight?
There are lots of other things that go on with weight. It's not about losing weight or gaining weight. That's not what it is. Our body is affected by our emotions. Our body is affected by our thoughts. But if you don't say anything, then you suffer with the consequences. And that's the thing. You're the one that's suffering. Not anybody else. Not anybody else. They're not going to be at home in bed or in the bathroom for 4 days. Are you peeing shortly after you drink water? Because you shouldn't be. If you are seeing pieces of your food, you are not digesting them. I really want people to hear this message.
Fran Garton joins me today. Fran is a #1 best-selling author, speaker, body positive personal trainer, pain reduction coach, and fibromyalgia warrior who teaches people to live pain-free. Welcome, Fran. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Tons of good stuff that we're going to dive into today. But I want to deviate from my questions just for a moment and ask your perspective on the body positivity movement. It was brought to my attention that there was a death recently of a body positivity model or representative, and she was not the first. So being a body positive personal trainer, what is your take on this?
On her death or just the movement itself?
I guess the combination.
Okay. I think that, okay, I'm in the fitness industry and I am not what a stereotypical fitness coach looks like. I'm not skinny. I don't restrict calories. I don't do any of those kinds of things. So for me, I think the body positive industry is really important because I think, and this is my opinion, it allows everybody a space in the world. It allows people a space in their wellness journey. And I think that when we talk about body positivity, we need to think about things like, what kind of inclusion things are we doing to make our classes or training more accessible to everybody so that everybody feels welcome. And I think that the body positive movement is really important. However, I do not believe that the fitness industry has embraced it at all. I think that they talk about it. I think that they portray that everything should be accessible and everything should be available. And like right now, as we're recording this podcast, we're at the end of 2023, which already all the things have come out of, you need to get in shape and you need to lose weight and you need to do all these things. Well, that's not body positive at all, because if that's not something that I'm looking for, by getting that messaging, it tells me that the body positive movement in some cases is not truly happening. And I think the fitness industry, as horrible as it is to say, and I'm sad to say it, does not include everybody. They don't make things accessible. Like, I have fibromyalgia. So for example, there are certain things that my body does not like. I actually went to a fitness class as a participant and told the instructor, and I was told, well, then I guess you don't do that movement. And I think, well, you are promoting body positivity, inclusiveness, and being accessible to everybody. But when someone is in your class and says they can't do something, you're like, oh, well, that's just too bad. You just don't do that one. So I'm going to stand there while everybody else does it. So I think that, this whole idea of body positivity is really important. But I think that in some cases, haven't really embraced it. We've just we talk about it, but we don't have any action backing that up. Does that make sense?
It does. Two questions stemming from that. did the instructor give you a modification?
No, and I am an instructor as well, and my whole premise of anything that I do when I work with my clients is modifications. Like I have people in my class that I'll show one exercise that we're doing and I'm like, here are the options. You guys are going to do this one and you guys over here will do this. Like modifications should be an everyday thing. And I think that even from a certification point of view, it's not included. It's not something that's talked about. It's starting to now kind of filter in, but I think again, the vast majority of people that are in the fitness industry, like if you looked at me, I'm not like overweight or anything or whatever. I'm larger than the normal acceptable body shape. And people would potentially look at me and go, well, what does she know about training? Like, what does she know about being well and fit? I'm very fit. I can do a lot of things, but just because I don't look a particular way, right, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't have access to these services and to, the fitness and the wellness industry. And yeah, that instructor didn't give me any modifications. I literally had to stand and wait till the exercise was done. And I'm
Hmm.
like, what kind of trainer are you that you can't? And if you don't want to do that, like that's the thing, right? We all have our area of expertise and our focal point and our ideal clients. And mine are people that have, chronic conditions or chronic pain, or they have injuries, or they're an older population. So yes, my training style is different than somebody who's training people for, to do bodybuilding competitions on a stage. Of course, it's different. But to have someone in your class, this is again, this is my opinion, right? But to have someone in your class and then you say, well, you'll just have to wait till we're done that exercise because I have nothing for you. That to me says you're not good at what you do. Because there are the people that need modifications are actually the rule, not the exception. If you were actually to provide it, because now, like when I teach my classes, there are people, they don't need a modification, but when they look at it, they're like, oh, I think that's safer for me and more achievable to do the modification than to do the other exercise. And so I think that, yeah, I have a lot to say about this. We could do our whole podcast on this.
I like it. I like it. I mean, you say whatever you want to say. I do want to clarify though.
Yeah.
So as far as the body positivity movement that's been happening, you are for it, but as long as the person is fit and healthy.
No, people should love, thank you for clarifying. No, people should accept and love themselves for who they are. Whether they are in a non-traditional or larger body, or I use these labels and words very loosely, but because I wouldn't use them, but the industry does, it doesn't really matter. You should love yourself for who you are because your outside is the least important thing about you,
Mm.
right? Your body is the least important thing about you. So I think that we should stop focusing on that. So the body positivity movement is important to accept people for who they are. If they want to get fit, if they want to lose weight, if they want to eat better, that's great. I think we should do that. But I don't think that they have to go together. And I think that sometimes they do.
So then what are your thoughts on the people that have passed away recently because of their weight?
It's tragic, obviously. I also think though that whether your weight is very, very low and dangerous or very, very high and dangerous, I mean, I think that that's partly, you know, there are a lot of things. One, people have chosen for a variety of reasons, or their path in front of them has resulted in them being over or underweight in a dangerous manner. And that stems, I think, in many cases, well, in some cases, we'll say some, not many, but there are lots of other things that go on with weight. It's not about losing weight or gaining weight. That's not what it is. It's about how maybe you've suffered trauma in your life. Maybe you're a survivor of abuse. Maybe you have been in a domestic violence situation that you've left. Maybe were in the foster care. Like there are so many factors that add trauma to your life, right? That could then show up as losing excessive weight or gaining excessive weight. So I think that for many of us, and I'm thinking about, my journey with pain, we have to figure out what the root cause is of why we're doing and making the choices that we make, right? Because there's something else going on. And I do think that in many cases, and I don't know about where you are, but I know here in Canada, like in many cases, you go to a doctor and all they want to do is give you medication. Not that medication isn't helpful, it absolutely can be. But if I get to the root cause of what's causing my physical problem, then maybe that will help solve it. And we don't necessarily do that. The medical field doesn't always do that. They just kind of pick the symptom, treat the symptom, and don't get to the cause of it. And then it just kind of repeats itself. So I think there are
Yeah.
many factors. I don't think it's just you're so underweight or you're so overweight and that it's dangerous. We know that. Like we know smoking's bad for us. We know drinking's bad for us. We know all these things and we choose to have them and that's okay. Like that's your choice. I think that's part of it. That's your choice. However, I think there are other underlying reasons that are causing people to maybe make these dangerous choices that put them put their health at risk.
Mm. Such a great answer. And now there are so many tabs open in my brain. But before we get too deep into it, can you share a bit about your personal journey? You mentioned your journey with pain. So what was your personal journey that led you to becoming a pain reduction coach?
Yeah. So I was an adult educator with the school board. This is almost 12 years ago. And I started having, migraines and trouble seeing and things like that, nausea. And I just assumed there was something going on with my eyes. So I did what many people do. I just took over the counter medication and just kind of ignored it and thought everything would be fine. It'll all work itself out. What ended up happening was I lost my vision and I had a migraine for 4 months and I spent 4 months in bed and it was all stress induced.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was terrifying and they thought I had a brain tumor and all these things and just lots of things going on. And so that put me in bed for 4 months. And after that, I started to make some other changes and in my lifestyle. And then after I healed through that, after those 4 months, and I went back to work and I reduced my work hours and tried to make better choices in life, I started suffering from extreme pain. And so when I talk about extreme pain, um, about a 15 out of 10 on a daily basis. And I'm not exaggerating. I had felt like bolts of electricity shooting through my hands and arms and my feet and my legs. I didn't sleep. I would pass out from exhaustion and then I would be jolted awake by the pain. And it got to the point where I could barely walk. And all I did was take Advil and try and make it through my day. And I would get up in the morning and cry because I was like, now I have to get out of bed. And I'd get out of bed, get to the shower. I'd cry in the shower because I'm like, now I have to get out of the shower, get dressed and go to work. It was just this never ending cycle. And it's very hard to imagine the intensity of the pain. And people have said to me, like, how did you function? And we adapt. Our body is very smart. Our brain is very smart and also very stupid. But in the smart way, with all the things I was going through, my body just kind of goes, oh, we're going to live at this level of pain. We were here before. Now we're up here. Oh, okay. We're at 5. Now we're going to be at 10. Oh, now we're going to be at 15. Okay. Well, we'll just function at 15. And your body adapts. It's like, well, we got to continue to go through our day and we ignore things and we push them away and we just think, oh, well, there's something weird going on, or I'll figure it out, or I'll manage it. Right. And the pain was brutal. And it went on for almost a year and a half before I got a diagnosis. And I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And they're like, oh, you're a textbook case and blah, blah, blah. And they gave me medication, which is fine. And the thing about it, though, was that it wasn't the root cause of what was happening, right? It was just the symptoms were the pain. So they gave me meds to help the pain, which they absolutely did. And then I kind of started living at about a 7 out of 10 after I got my diagnosis and medication, which is great. Now, for people who don't have pain, you're probably thinking 7 out of 10 is horrible, but I lived at 15 out of 10. So 7 is It's like 100% difference, right?
Mhm.
And so but I still had some pain, and I was thinking there has to be more. So then I started working with an energetic practitioner. I changed the food that I ate. I reduced the inflammation in my body. I did forgiveness work. I reduced my stress. There were a number of factors that I worked on to then get myself to where I am today. So now I have zero pain and I don't take medication. I mean, once in a while, maybe an ibuprofen, but nothing major. And I kind of live at like zero. So now if I'm at a two, I my husband thinks it's funny. I mean, I love him and he's so supportive, but he thinks it's kind of funny now because I'm like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. And he's like, really? Like, really? I'm like, yes, I meant like a two. And he's like, wow, that's serious business. Well, it is now because I live at zero. So, but in comparison, it's nothing. But when you change things and your body heals itself and you start to feel better, then the smallest little thing, right, that cause a little bit of pain, you're like, oh my gosh, like how do you live there? And it's very interesting because when I work with my clients and I talk to them about, having pain, they just are so used to being in so much pain on a regular basis that the idea that it could actually disappear is so foreign to them. And unless you've actually come out of it, you don't know, you don't have a comparison, right?
Mhm.
It's like, think about things like, I don't know, menstrual cramps is a good example, right? You get your
Mhm.
period and you have terrible pain and you're like, oh, I'm going to die. And then it's over and you're like, oh, I'm good. Right. But you have that comparison because you know what it's like when the cramps are really bad. And then you know what you feel like when they're okay. But when you don't have that difference and you never have that reprieve from the pain, you don't actually understand or comprehend how you could actually reduce it and make it go away because it's just a constant. Does that
Mhm.
answer your question?
Yes. So many different analogies come to mind. And one, just like the period cramps, how I don't have any children myself, but I know that women's brains are designed to forget the pain of childbirth. And so there's that, because you'll have someone will have a child and be like, oh, that was so painful, I'm never doing that again. And then 6 months, a year later, they're ready. And then also, it sounds like your pain tolerance went up, and then as you healed, your pain tolerance adapted, which is incredible. The body is so amazing. I want to know, how did you begin to heal? Because I know you were taking the medications, which were just helping mask the symptoms, really. But then you got to a place where you did heal and you got the pain down. So what did you do to do that?
Yeah, so I had at one point, after I had my diagnosis, I had a lump on my wrist, a really big, it was big, it was quite large, and it was there forever. And the problem was, I couldn't use my hand, like at all. I couldn't even pick, like, when you get like a Kleenex from the box and you pull it out of the box, I had no strength to do that. Like it was terrible. And I had this gigantic lump. So one of my mentors had said to me, you need to go see this guy. And he's an energetic practitioner and he works on healing your gut and all this stuff, right? And bringing it down to inflammation in the body. And he looks at it holistically. And I was like, okay. So I drove 2 hours to see this guy. And when I got there, I had said to him, he's like, well, why are you here? And he kind of did the sort of like a visual assessment, had me kind of move around. He was just sort of watching me, right? And I said, well, I came because of this lump on my wrist. And he's like, um, is that where you want to start? He's like, because I've been watching you for the past couple minutes just walk and sit and stand. And he's like, that's the thing you're worried about? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. He's like, there are some other things that I'm noticing. So why don't we work on those things? I'm like, you're the boss, like you're in charge. So sure, whatever. He goes, and this will sort itself out. And I'm thinking, okay. So what ended up happening was he put me on some supplements. I changed everything that I ate. And he said, my inflammation in my body was so intense that my muscles couldn't heal themselves. My body couldn't heal itself because I had so much inflammation. And so he said, the number one thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on bringing the inflammation down. So we changed, I changed everything that I ate. I mean, I'm gluten-free and have been for about 30 years. But we got rid of dairy and we got rid of, any kind of, corn and soy, and we got rid of a lot of things from my food to heal my gut. And then that brought my inflammation down. And it was very interesting because I am a trainer and I teach fitness classes. And when I was with him, when I saw him, he said, "You can't exercise." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "You cannot, because your body can't heal. Your muscles are so inflamed that there will be no recovery. So you're going to be constantly in pain and like, because when you exercise, you rip your muscle fibers and they can't repair themselves. They have no ability to do that right now. So for 3 months, I was actually not able to exercise at all, like at all. And I said, "But I teach classes." And he goes, "You get to show them 2 reps and that's it. That's it. And you're not exercising." And I'm like, "Can I walk?" He goes, "Nope." He goes, "You can meditate, you can do breathing exercises. That's it. That's all you get to do." I thought, oh my gosh, what is, like, this is crazy. But in 3 months, I mean, the weight loss was not the goal, but I lost 30 pounds and I ate whatever I was, like, I ate fruit, vegetables, meat, right? Like nothing processed. And no measuring, no counting calories, nothing. And I worked on reducing stress and I worked on, breathing because that's what I was told that I could do. And it was kind of interesting because this big lump that I had has completely disappeared on its own. I didn't do anything for it, but it was part of the inflammation. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how changing this, and then I worked with a mindset coach. So worked on reducing stress, worked on forgiveness work, worked on, loving myself and accepting myself, and all these little pieces add up. Right? You
Mhm.
can't just do one thing. There are many facets, like I mentioned earlier, to having pain and having, you know, any kind of health issues. There's other things going on. It's not just a physical ailment or not just the system. There are other things going on. Like our body is affected by our emotions. Our body is affected by our thoughts. Like, so we need to look at those things. Stress is like horrible, horrible. If anybody's trying to do anything to improve their life, if your stress is high, it's you're not going to make any headway. Like, you're just not, because cortisol is crazy and your body doesn't know how to manage high cortisol. It's not how we're designed.
Mm. So the doctor that you went to that had you change your diet, I'm guessing is not the same doctor that prescribed the medications initially. And
No, they missed, that was my family doctor for the initial medication, or sorry, my rheumatologist for the medications for fibro. And then the person that I saw was a holistic energetic practitioner. And he had me on some supplements and then mostly diet, like not dieting, but changing my food, right? And healing my gut, because the gut is really, really important for your overall health.
yes, I would definitely agree with that. Is your diet still the same today?
Pretty much. I mean, I'm a little bit more loose on what I choose, but yeah, I'm gluten free, I'm dairy free. I just don't eat that. My body doesn't like it. And that's where, when I mentioned earlier, Jessica, about how you don't know the difference, like when you're living in pain all the time, you don't know what the difference is. It's the same idea. When your gut is healthy, and then you have something, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna die," right? But if you're a person, for example, I'll just use gluten because it's the thing that affects me the most. If you eat gluten and you don't normally have it, my reaction is so intense. I'm in so much pain that I think, "Oh my, I can't do it anymore." And when I first went gluten free like 30 years ago, I would cheat every once in a while. I'd have a piece of bread or we'd go somewhere and I'm like, "Oh, it's fine. I can eat that." And every time I did it, my reaction was more intense and more negative than it was the time before. And then finally I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like, my body doesn't like it. And so when you have that difference, then you actually notice what are the things that affect you. Because I know lots of people are like, "I'm fine if I eat, gluten or dairy. That's fine. It doesn't affect me." And I'm like, "Really?" Because we should look at your poop And we should look at your gut and look at your body and notice, are you bloated? Are you gassy? Like, is that normal? Are you constipated? Yeah, yeah. I know someone who said, a client that said to me, I poop every 4 days. And I'm like, what? She said, yeah, it's fine. It's normal. No, no, that's not. She goes, it's normal for me. No, it shouldn't be that way. Like, that's not how our body is designed.
Mhm.
But because that's the way it was for her all the time, she just assumed that's how it was. So she spent decades in, this is her system. This is what it
Mhm.
looks like for her. And then I was like, okay, well, I recommend let's just try and take a few things, modify a few things. And I remember her saying to me, I poop 2 days in a row. And that's a big deal for her. And so we don't really think about it because there is no change. Like, there's no variation in how we feel or how our body functions or responds, because I'm always bloated, or I'm always gassy, or I'm always constipated. And we don't really think about, but it shouldn't be like that. But because we spent decades potentially in this pattern, we're like, that's my normal way. And it really isn't. And it's not until you change things and then start to actually pay attention to your body and go, oh, wow, like, yeah,
Mhm.
pooping at least once a day is good. Like, that's normal. Right. But it's weird because she didn't do that.
I'm smiling because I can relate to this so much. It's ridiculous. I recently had a conversation that went almost exactly like that, as far as, oh, you used to like this food or you used to eat this. And I said, yes, my body just doesn't like it. My body doesn't like it anymore. That's it. My body, just like you're saying, my body likes certain things, it doesn't like other things. And then my family, they think that, oh, like we could eat these things, like, and we're fine. They think like, why can you and you're not fine? And I just look at them and I'm like, well, you have this problem, this problem, this problem. Like, it's the food. The food is affecting you, but you're choosing to not look at it. You're choosing to ignore the consequences of the food that you're eating. And yeah, it's like, once you feel so good, then you can notice these every little thing. I know if I eat something that I don't normally eat, I will feel it for at least a few days. Sometimes it'll take a week, sometimes it'll show up on my skin. And I know instantly. I know before I even eat it, really. But some
Yeah.
people choose to
Yeah.
do it anyway.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, like you said, right? Like, people, your family is like, or friends, or they're like, why can we eat it and you can't? But and again, this is where, when we talked about this earlier, this is people's choice. They can choose to be however they want. But the way I look at it from a pain point of view is, if you, let's say you have arthritis, okay? Arthritis, not fibromyalgia, even though it's in the arthritis family, it is not inflammatory. Arthritis is an inflammatory condition. It inflames your joints, your muscles, everything, okay? If you eat foods that cause inflammation, your arthritis pain hurts. Your arthritis is going to be worse. That's just a fact, because arthritis is the result of, like, the feeling of it is inflammation. The illness itself is inflammatory, and
Mhm.
it's progressively inflammatory. So as your arthritis gets worse, if you're eating foods that are causing inflammation, like gluten and dairy are or sugar is a big one, right? It causes inflammation. If you're eating that, your inflammation is going to get worse, which means your arthritis hurts more. Like,
Mhm.
that's just how it works. And
Right.
so, if you're listening to this and you have pain in your body, my advice is, let's just eliminate some sugar. Let's start with that. Sugar is probably the big one. It's the one that people have the hardest time getting rid of, because sugar is in everything. But if maybe you can't eliminate it completely. And I tell my clients this, go for 20 grams a day. Like, look at your food. I mean, my husband is gluten-free because I am. And he bought peanut butter. And I just like peanuts. I don't like any of the other kinds with all the stuff in them, right? So he bought whatever the kind we got wasn't there. So he bought some Kraft, or I don't know what, Jiffy, whatever he bought. And he brought it home and he goes, there's 5 grams of sugar in this peanut butter. I'm not sure why, but yeah, there's 5 grams of sugar, because It's a preservative because it bulks it up. Like you don't need that. So if you look at what you're eating in a day, 5 grams of sugar. If I only get 20 grams of sugar and I have a piece of bread, which also has sugar in it, which again, not sure why, you could have easily hit 8 or 9 grams of sugar at breakfast.
Mhm.
At breakfast. And you haven't even got through the rest of your day yet. And you've already almost hit like half of what if you're trying to reduce it to 20 grams. So
Mhm.
be mindful of what it is that you're actually eating.
Mhm.
And, like you said, if people are always feeling kind of crappy and but they don't know it, they don't identify it as feeling crappy because like you and I, they don't have a way to gauge that.
Right.
They think it's just how I feel. My body always aches or I'm always bloated.
Mhm.
But if they were to actually reduce and change what they ate and actually pay attention to their body, like you said, when you eat something, it's going to affect your body. Like, I know if I eat red meat, the pain in my
Really?
body, yes, yeah, red meat really bothers me. So I don't eat it. Like I just don't because it causes, that those electric shocks through my
Mhm.
hands. That's what
Yeah.
happens to my hands and all the way up my arms and my feet. It's brutal.
Oh, interesting. Does it matter the quality? Like if it's grass fed, because I know if it's grain fed, then it's fed corn and soy and the things that you're avoiding.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Um, it affects me. It's not as intense if I have things that are grass fed and free range and all that kind of stuff. It's much better. But it still does affect me. My
Hmm.
body's just sensitive to it. Like eggplant, nightshades are inflammatory. They can cause your arthritis to flare. So I can have them in moderation, but not a lot because my body doesn't like them.
Yeah, see, potatoes used to be a go-to for me, and then my body decided it didn't want potatoes anymore. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yes.
so fascinating because we're all so different and we're changing. So what was working before might not work anymore.
Exactly, because that's where the body's really smart. So the body's like, okay, like Jessica's getting rid of all these nightshades from her body. Okay, all right. Does she know potatoes are nightshades? Because she did good. She did good. No onions, no peppers, no tomatoes, no eggplant. And what about those potatoes? Did she remember about those? She's going heavy on those. Let's remind her those are nightshades as well, right? And because your body does adjust because I think I think as you take the stuff out, your body starts to heal, right?
Mhm.
And then and sometimes I can eat potatoes, but not a lot. Like I
Mhm.
have to be and I can't like if I have potatoes, onions, pepper, like all together, they can't all be together. That that's a recipe for disaster. But I could have potatoes. That's fine. And I'm okay. But
Mhm.
if there's other nightshades, doesn't work. So the body does adapt and it does. And I think sometimes it's like, okay, Jessica's been doing a good job. We're proud of her. She's doing so well. Now let's kick it up a little bit because now we're going to the next level. You're going to level up and now we're going to get rid of potatoes. And then we'll level up again and get rid of something else because I think your body really does, it does know what it's doing. And I think it responds to us listening to it and says, oh, yes, Fran's listening. Okay, good. Right. We're going to give her positive feedback for doing a good job, getting rid of that stuff that flares her arthritis. And now we've got that all calmed down. Now there's another thing that we're going to work on for
Mhm.
paying attention to. Right. So it is a process for sure.
Yes, yes. In your coaching, you emphasize mindset, movement, and nutrition. How do these three components work together to alleviate pain?
Okay, so nutrition we just talked about, right? That is really key to keeping the gut healthy and keeping inflammation low in the body. I just want to add one thing about that. I talked about sugar and the key to sugar and why sugar is really not good for us. Um, Besides all the sciencey research articles, from a very fundamental point of view, our fascia, which is our connective tissue that allows my fingers and my body and the muscles to be flexible and to move, right? Fascia should be healthy. And when fascia is healthy, it gets a lot of blood flow and it slides. So it moves and it allows me to move my hands and bend my fingers. When fascia is unhealthy, it gets sticky. And so when we eat sugar, it causes the fascia to get sticky like Velcro. So that when I actually, and think about if you have arthritis in your hands, when I try to bend my fingers, they're really stiff and it hurts because the fascia is not moving because there's inflammation. So the
Mm,
sugar and the food that we eat affects the inflammation, which affects then how we can move. So that's an important piece of the nutrition part. And the
mm,
gut health is really important, healing the gut. So eliminating inflammatory foods. And when it comes to movement, we are designed to move. That that's how we're made. We are not made with like two bones in our arms. We are made with, dozens of them to allow us to move. And so I think when it comes to movement, and I don't really like the word exercise. It's not something that I like to use. I feel that movement should be something that keeps your body healthy and that you enjoy. So if you want to lift weights, lift weights. If you want to go for a walk, go for a walk. If you want to do yoga, great, do that. If you want to dance, I like dancing. I think it's really important. It's part of probably my daily life. I would say I dance at least once a day, put on my favorite song and dance.
mm,
So find something in movement that you enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you're going to do it. And when you do it, then you're going to feel better, right? Because we're getting the body moving. And again, coming back to fascia, the moving keeps the fascia healthy and it keeps you feeling good. And then when it comes to mindset, probably the biggest thing that I would say, Jessica, when I talk to my clients is reducing stress. Stress is so horrible. When we are in a stress situation and we feel stress, cortisol is released. And cortisol is, we are designed to have the cortisol release. We deal with the danger or the stressful situation, and then we go back to no stress. And so again, this is where we talk about the differences, right? So if I live at like a 2 out of 10 in stress, and then something happens and I go up to like a 10, cortisol is released. I figure out what's going on. I deal with the stress, and then I go back to my 2. And that's how life should be. That's how we should be. But what's happened is we are living in a chronic state of stress. So there's no difference now. So there's no high, low. It's just here. And so when I talk to clients, they'll say, I don't have stress. I have a client that has 5 children from the ages of 4 to 12. That's a lot of kids, first of all. But that age range is a nightmare. And they haven't even become teenagers yet. Like that's a very hard time in kids' lives, right? And she says, I don't have any stress. I have no idea how you actually think that that's possible. When she said that, I said that I don't believe you, because she's always living in such a high state of stress. She never has a down moment. So she doesn't understand. So her body is constantly releasing the cortisol.
mm,
And so her body can't heal, it can't function well, it can't recover. So the mindset piece in the fact of, looking at your stressors in your life. And the second part of mindset, which I think is really important, is that we have choices. We have choices. We might not like the choices, but we have choices. So I'll use your example of eating, right? When you're making food choices, your family might not understand. So for you, in the beginning, it probably was much easier for you to avoid the conflict, to avoid trying to explain to everybody, just eat the food they serve. And then you're sick for 4 days. Because being sick for 4 days from the response and reaction of the food in your body was less triggering, stressful, uncomfortable, whatever word you want, than actually having the conversation with your family about the fact that you can't eat what they're serving.
mm.
Do you understand what I mean? So the choice is you chose to eat the food. Or when
Right.
you're with people and you don't want to be with people who are very toxic for you or who are very stressful for you, you interact with those people even though you don't want to. And then you have the physical effects, because it's easier for you to just go suffer through 3 hours with them than it is to decline the invitation, because then you have to deal with, oh, well, why aren't you going? Why do you do that's not very kind, blah blah, like all these things that you have to deal with. It's just easier to shut up, deal with it, suffer through it, and then you have all the after effects. And the choice is that you made the decision to deal with these people. You made the decision to go. And so when it comes to mindset, I really want people to hear this message. You do have a choice. it might be uncomfortable and it might be difficult in the beginning, but you do have the choice.
Mhm.
I was at a family function at Christmas. My family doesn't really understand why I'm gluten-free.
Mhm.
And some options were gluten-free, some were not. And one of the people that was there was making a casserole and they were putting like, I don't know, breadcrumbs or something with gluten on top. And before they were putting it together, I asked, is it possible to leave just a little corner of that without the breadcrumbs for me? And they went, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, because breadcrumbs have gluten in them. Oh, well, can't you just have a little bit? And my response was, no, I cannot. But for other people, when you don't feel comfortable with that, you would go, okay, it's fine, whatever. I just won't eat it or I'll pick around it and I said, no, actually, I can't have any. Can you leave the corner? Oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Why don't you put the breadcrumbs on? Like you put it on and leave a section however much you want. Great. But because I said something, then there was an accommodation. But if you don't say anything, then you suffer with the consequences. And that's the thing. You're the one that's suffering, not
Mhm.
anybody else. Not anybody else. They're not going to be at home in bed or in the bathroom for 4 days.
Right.
You are. So you do have choices. And when it comes to, I deal with a lot of parents and you know, I don't know how things were when I was growing up is like the food was cooked and you ate the food that was there. And if you didn't like it, I was told you can make your own food. So I have moms who are like, but my family won't eat that. Okay. Will they not eat it because they don't like it? Or will they not eat it because you have designed a system that they are allowed to go, I don't want that, and you'll make them something else? Because those are two different systems,
Yeah.
right? And if you are always in a this relationship with people where you're the one that's doing for them and you're making all the accommodations for them, that's what they're used to because that's the system that you've designed. So you've taught people that you've taught your children or your family, well, if I don't want that, she'll make me something else. So I don't want that because I know mom's going to make me something else. But
Mhm.
if that's not the case, if you change the system, then you're making one meal for everybody. And if they can't eat it or they don't want it, then they can have something else. They are welcome to go have something else. So you
Mhm.
design the systems in your life. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like I said earlier, it's much easier for you, for the person that's having to make all these accommodations. It's much easier to avoid the disagreement or argument, right? To just, okay, fine, I'll just make 6 different meals because all my kids want something different. But
Right.
it's not easier for you because you're the one that's doing all the work.
Mhm.
But you have the choice. If you're the cook, if you're the chef in the house that's doing all the cooking, then you make the rules, right? So I just think we have to sort of shift our mindset and our perspective on how we're looking at things that we're doing in our life. People will protest 100%. When you change something, we're not going to eat sugar anymore, or we're not going to buy things that have gluten in it. People are going to protest a lot. Your whole entire family is going to protest. But the reality is, one, they'll be healthier for it. And two, you taught them to always say, I don't want that to eat because you're going to make them something else. So now you're going to reteach them something new that we're not eating gluten anymore because it's bad for us. And
Mhm.
these are the things that we're going to do. They will come around.
Right. You
If
have
they
to.
don't, that's fine. I mean, some of us in this situation, our kids are teenagers, right? They can make their own food.
Right.
So if they really want to eat gluten, they can eat gluten. Let them, right? So it really is about a perspective and looking at the idea that you really do have choices. And that's a big piece of the mindset, the stress and the choices. And setting up those boundaries, really, really important. And you have to think about, ultimately, I think in some cases, you want to be there for your family and friends and loved ones. So you need to take care of yourself because if you aren't taking care of yourself, you're not going to be there for them. If
Mhm.
you are eating foods that your body reacts to so painfully that you're going to be in bed for 3 or 4 days from the pain, you can't be there for your kids. You can't be there for your partner and your family and friends. So why would you make those choices? Make
Mhm.
choices that will allow you to live your life and enjoy it with the people that you love.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so beautifully said. We always have a choice, and it's showing up as that person. You present yourself. That's how other people know how to treat you, is the way that you treat yourself. So if you're not putting your own health and your needs and your wants first, then that teaches everyone else that they come before you. But everybody needs to be putting themselves first.
Yeah. And it also, I think too, when you think about it, Jessica, you also imagine you have kids, right? You're teaching your children that when they have a family and they have people to care for in their life, they are not going to be first. Their role, their job, and I put that in quotation marks, is to make sure everybody else is first. So that pattern is going to be repeated through the people around you, through your kids, because they're learning that. They're seeing you put everybody else first and do everything for everybody else. So that is the pattern that they're going to repeat when they grow up. And it's just this terrible cycle of not taking care of ourselves and worrying about everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a piece of it as well to consider. I've said that to a client of mine. Do you want your daughter, she's 7 years old now, do you want her now to have to be working with a coach when she's 40 about setting boundaries and changing decisions and not doing everything for everybody else and people pleasing all the time? Because that's the pattern you're setting up for her, because that's what you're showing her. You're showing her to be a people pleaser. And that is not a functional way to live your life. Many people do it, but it's not good for you. And so there's nothing wrong with, saying what you want and need. And there's nothing wrong with saying no to somebody. There is no explanation required. I don't eat gluten. Why not? Because I don't. There is no is the sentence. When you set a boundary, and we haven't, I don't think we've internalized that in many cases. We've been shown something different, so now we need to change how we're doing things and how we're responding to others.
Mhm. I want to know, we have diet, which is a big one, and then there's stress, and then maybe quality of sleep. There's these different pain triggers that individuals can have. So how can you pinpoint what it is that how can you identify which trigger is most prominent for someone, and why is this an essential step in pain management?
That's a good question. um to be perfectly honest, the biggest things that I deal with clients, stress is always important. I have never worked with anybody, myself included, that stress is not an issue. There are stressors. We all have stressors in our lives. It's how we respond to them. So stress is really important. But when it comes to other triggers, because food is a trigger, see, to me, food is kind of the easy one in my mind, because it's the one that you see the most immediate results,
Mhm.
right? And if you can eliminate things, so like I said earlier, start with sugar. Just eliminate sugar and then track how you feel. Like, pay attention to your body, because that's part of identifying your triggers is changing something. Stay with it for, I tell my clients, like 2 to 3 weeks. So if you're minimizing your sugar, 2 to 3 weeks. Let's go with 20 grams a day max and track it. And then and as you go through those few weeks, take notes, like keep track of it, write it in a diary, a journal, or just, I don't know, your phone, however you want to do that. And notice how your body's feeling. What's going on with your skin? What's going on with your digestion? How's your poop? How's your sleep? Because the foods that you eat will affect the sleep that you have, right? So notice those kinds of things. So it is, identifying your triggers is really important, and tracking them is the most important piece, right? But honestly, sugar, so what you're eating, your stress, the amount of sleep that you're getting, look at how what your poop is like, look at your water. So this is something that I learned for myself, which I didn't really, I don't know why I didn't think about it, but I didn't. Um, are you going to the bathroom? Are you peeing shortly after you drink water? Because you shouldn't be. We should pee about 3 to 4 hours. Every 3 to 4 hours, we should go to the bathroom, because that's when our bladder's full. And I would drink like, I don't know, a glass of water, and like 5 minutes later I'd pee because my body wasn't absorbing any of the water. So it didn't matter how much water I drank. I just was peeing it out. Like it wasn't actually absorbing anything because my inflammation was so high and my gut was so unhealthy that it couldn't actually absorb any of the nutrients and it couldn't take the water into the cells like it's supposed to. I just peed it out all the time. So look at how your bathroom schedule is. That's important as well. If you're not absorbing it and you're just going to the bathroom all the time after you drink, you're not absorbing the water. So there's some inflammation in your body. So we need to work on reducing inflammation. So again, food and stress and sleep all affects inflammation. Movement affects your inflammation. So it really is, there's not only one thing, Jessica. There are many things that will affect your pain, and you have to sort of start with one and stay with it for 2 to 3 weeks, and then and then you add something else and make a change somewhere else. So it really is about listening to your body. And I think that if we spend some time paying attention to, what we eat and how our body responds, it's not, in some cases, it's not a big mystery. Like it really isn't. You'll automatically be bloated after you eat your meal. Okay, what'd you eat? I bet you ate gluten and dairy. I bet that you did. Gluten is a big thing. I'm very passionate about being gluten free, and I know some people think it's a big joke, and you know what? Whatever, it's fine. I don't care because they don't get as sick as I do when I eat gluten. So I'm fine with that. They can think that's ridiculous. I'm sure you've heard it too. That's ridiculous. Nobody's allergic to gluten, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? Because there's a very big anti-gluten-free movement out there. And no problem. They are welcome to be anti-gluten-free. I have no problem with that. It doesn't affect me at all. I just don't eat gluten.
There's a part of me that secretly believes that nobody on this planet should be eating gluten.
Have you read Wheat Belly?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a great book. It's called Wheat Belly. I highly recommend it. If you when they talk about wheat, and they talk about wheat and corn, those are kind of the two. They are the most genetically modified foods, especially corn, in the world.
Yes.
Like the way that wheat was, and it's interesting because when I travel and I go other places, I can sometimes eat bread in those places because it's not genetically modified like it is here in North America. And
Yeah.
so the wheat is completely different, but the wheat is a very different genetic construct than it was thousands of years ago when it was first discovered and they started making things with it. Completely different DNA structure, genetic structure. So
Mhm.
I agree 100%. I don't think anybody should eat wheat ever. It's
Okay.
it's horrible. Like
Same with
anyway.
corn, and they use corn to make everything.
Well, okay, so this is a good segue into talking. I like talking about poop, Jessica, because it's really important. When you eat corn, okay, look in the toilet. It looks the same as it in and out. It's the same. When you have a food intolerance, look in the toilet after you poop. If you can see that food, your body hasn't absorbed it at all. You have some kind of intolerance. Now, is that going to be with you forever? That used to be the same used to be with me with oranges. But it's not now. I can eat oranges now, but I never used to be able to. So have a look and see what's going on. Because if you are seeing pieces of your food, you are not digesting them. They are just
Ah,
going through your system, right? Like spinach. Spinach is a perfect example. I am not a spinach person. Doesn't work for me. It's like corn for me.
wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, look in the toilet. You'll see your body isn't digesting it because when your body digests and eliminates it, it still has to break it down. So when you actually eliminate and you poop the food, whatever's left, the waste out, it doesn't look like the food that you ate. It shouldn't look like the food you ate. It's absorbed, it's broken down into its smallest components. Your body takes what nutrients it needs and can use, and then it eliminates everything else as waste. It looks like waste. It should look like poop. It shouldn't look like spinach.
Mm.
So if you're not sure, that's a great way to check and see about your food, what's going on in the toilet, and how you feel after you eat something. So really, um, notice your body, because your body will tell you what's going on. If I eat dairy, I get breakouts all here on my chin. It's dry skin. It's just dry skin patches, and it's only right around my jawline on either side of my mouth. But when I have dairy, immediately, like within an hour.
Hmm.
So you can really, if you pay attention to your body, you'll notice. You'll definitely notice what's affecting
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. So the big thing about triggers, there are many different triggers. Pick one thing that you want to start with. I would suggest food and water. Those are great things to start with. They're easy to control. And you can see the effects really quickly, and track it for 2 to 3 weeks. And then from there, you can modify it and see what's another thing that you could work on, because there are so many triggers. But once you identify them, then you know what they are. And once you bring the inflammation and pain down in your body, when a trigger comes up, you'll know right away, because you've already reduced any kind of pain that you've got. The last thing I want to say about that is I want to talk about stress quickly. Everybody has a stress spot on their body. Everybody. Mine's my right low back. And even if you don't feel stress, I want you to see if you can identify where your stress spot is on your body. And I just want you to notice it. So for me, what I started noticing was I would feel the pain in my right low back, and I go, oh, did I do something to hurt it? No. Okay. Oh, I must be stressed, because that's my stress spot. And at the beginning, when I was doing this, like 9 times out of 10, I was like, I don't feel stressed at all. But then when I actually started thinking about the thing, like what was going on in my world, I was like, oh, yeah, I do feel, but I don't feel stressed. But that spot on my right low back would flare up, and I would feel pain there. And I'm like, okay. So as soon as you know where your stress spot is, pay attention to it. Because even if you're like, I don't feel stressed, how's your stress spot?
It's like a warning light.
It is a warning light. It's like that check engine light on your car, right? Don't just put tape over it, like check the engine, right? But
Yeah.
that stress spot it's your key. So when you can know what it is, then you just check in with that. Check in every day. How's my stress spot?
These
And
are
then you'll know something's going on.
Yes, these are some really great tips. As we start to wrap up our time together, I would love for you to share us a little bit about your book and anything else that you would like to share with the listeners.
Yeah. So my book is called Healing the Hurt, a step-by-step guide to alleviate and minimize pain. And it basically is my journey to getting to a pain-free life. And so each chapter focuses on something different. One is about triggers, one's about inflammation. There's a section on stress. There's a section on movement. So all the different things that I did to get myself out of the pain cycle. And in each chapter, at the end of each chapter, there's something that I call a momentum step. And this momentum step is designed for you to do an activity of some kind to help you with your pain. So one of my chapter 1 is actually about fibromyalgia. And I'll just show it to you here. There's a chart at the end of the chapter, which is your tender points pain tracker. And so what it does is I want you track your pain. What parts of your body were painful? How did it feel? And the date of it. And you just kind of track it for 2 or 3 weeks. And then that way you'll have an idea of, let's say you don't know if you have fibromyalgia, you have this tracker that you can actually take with you when you go see your doctor. Go, okay, this is the pain that I've had. This is when it happened, and this is where it happened. Because if you do have fibromyalgia, there are certain points in your body that are called tender points or trigger points, and they're very common for people that have fibromyalgia. But if you don't know what they are, or you don't know where your pain is, then you can't really track it. But if you track it, then you'll be able to use that to refer to and to bring to your healthcare team. But each chapter has something in it, a tracker, a worksheet, some reflection questions, something that you do, your action step, to help you with whatever that focus is for that chapter. So each of the chapters focuses on different areas that I worked on through my pain journey, and then steps that you can implement to work on yourself.
That's incredibly helpful. Could you show us the cover?
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Healing the Hurt.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's a very practical book, and gives you lots of practical advice, because when I was going through my pain journey, I found that there wasn't all the things that I needed in one place. I had to kind of look for them. And so this is what's worked for me. I use this with my clients. They do all the stuff that's in here is what I do with them when I coach them. And you can do it on your own. Um, if you can't, there are people out there, myself, Jessica, other people around. I know people, like we can connect you with people that can help you. But the truth of it is, is that you have the choice and you have the power to make changes in your life. And if you don't, that's okay. You don't have to be gluten-free, and you don't have to get rid of your stress, and you don't have to do any of the things that Jessica and I talked about through this episode. But remember then that the effects are the ones that you live with. So you have the choice and you have the power to change things if you really want to. So I would encourage people to sort of sit and reflect on what changes they want to make in their life. The people around you will be fine. They'll adjust. And the ones who won't are not meant to be there anyway.
Yes. Yep. I have one final question for you, Fran. What is your number one health tip? Whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
Just try. That's what I like everybody to know. Just try something. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be good at it. Just try it. And look at your health journey, your wellness journey, as an experiment. Let's see what happens if I do this. Let's just see. And I think that's the biggest thing that I preach all the time. Let's just see what happens. So try it out. If you don't like it, try something else.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question. Where can
Okay.
people where can people find more from you?
They can find me on Instagram, Fran Garton Pain Coach. And I'm happy to connect with people. And if people have questions, please reach out.
Awesome. And that will be in the description, of course. Thank you so much for your time, Fran. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much.
That concludes this episode. If this resonated with you, please give it a rating and review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Links are in the show notes. I sincerely thank you for your time and your presence.